Team Ninja has never made an easy game, and I secretly hope they never do, because even if in the short run I hate them for their perverted tendency to turn challenge into torture, I grow to love them in the end for the journey of self-discovery they take me on. Because if you have the patience to make your way through this living hell, you realize you should be able to achieve almost anything in life. Anything else that would be better than wasting 100+ hours on an obnoxious video game completion list. But people watch these videos because they too have morbid curiosity. So let's take a deeper look at what makes Ninja Gaiden 3 one of the legendary series' best and worst entries at the same time. From the extremity of Dead or Alive to the glorious Ninja Gaiden and the ethereal Neo series, these Japanese sadists have one goal in mind for their players. They want us to suffer, to force ourselves to dig deep within, eventually earning our satisfaction by any means necessary, even if that means using underhanded tactics while raging at the very grip of murder. Come the fuck on. Yeah, you fucking bitch. Give me the shit. Fuck, I got you. Watch out, bitch. Watch out. Yes, Ninja Gaiden 3 Rager's Edge pushed me at least as far as the first two games did, if not a little bit more than usual, because unlike Sigma 1 and 2, which are polished to near perfection, Ninja Gaiden 3 is not just riddled with questionable design choices and glaring balancing issues, like making you fight wave after wave of bosses that are actually made for co-op and not solo. Like a partner in a toxic relationship, it's not just needlessly complicated. It's safe to say it has an identity crisis. But I personally believe in myself, so no matter what, I had to get every single trophy in this game once again to prove that I am worthy of the Master Ninja title. If there's any title worth having as an action game fan, I think maybe this one means something. As the conclusion of the best ninja trilogy in gaming, Razor's Edge is surely a game better than most in its genre. Yet it presents a lot of problems in the way of a draining platinum trophy grind, downright awkward cutscene padding, and the insulting infuriation of QTEs that disrupt the flow state of pure action, turning an otherwise breakneck game into a glorified, playable movie, which we do not want games to be. I say this as someone that likes QuickTime events generally, but do we really need climbing mechanics like this in a beat-em-up game? A simple ninja flip up a wall would suffice. Or how about the way you have to spam QTEs to finish a boss fight that's already won? It's just excessive, or in other words, your standard Japanese game design. But even after all these pointless design changes to a once-winning formula, there's something else about a Rager's Edge that may serve as its saving grace. The fact that Ninja Gaiden 3 is the one game in the Master Collection that just about everyone agrees on being the best re-release of the series, simply because the original Ninja Gaiden 3 was even more atrocious. For a game made in 2012, you can see glimpses of the origins of those so-called modern design features that have aged miserably to the point that I just see them as modern mistakes. The walking sim moments, the inexplicable stealth sections that halt the action pacing, and the excessive QTEs just jammed in your face work wonders to bake unwanted cutscenes into gameplay in the worst of ways. Underneath all of the nonsense is still a very good, if not occasionally great, action game that at its best matches the ferocity of what I imagine the original Ninja Gaiden 2 provided, and in some moments potentially rivals the intensity of the original Itagaki-led brand. Where there are questionable alterations to unique design in favor of chasing cheap trends for wider appeal, there can also be found bold twists on convention in search of innovation and to test old veterans that wanted more. The decision to remove essence entirely solves the problem of the over-reliance, if not the crutch, of spamming UTs to clear out rooms. Razor's Edge looks at first glance like a more skillful game, a test of resourcefulness and endurance without the option of the easy way out. Now, by executing a multitude of enemies in a timely manner, you get a super UT as a reward, because the game throws entire armies at Ryu. The pacing never lets up here, and there's hardly any time to just run to a corner and charge a UT when the enemies are running right after you side by side. Among other changes, the other huge twist is that instead of farming enemies for currency drops, The karma is awarded automatically based on performance bonuses, like killing enemies with the Bloody Rage multiplier active, or chaining the new crutch mechanic of sorts, the Steel on Bone parry. For this, the upgrade system is also streamlined in the form of skill trees, which we still see in modern Team Ninja games like Neo, where the skill tree doesn't just augment the base build, but is the very essence of the build in true action RPG fashion. But for a game like Ninja Gaiden though, which is at most a light RPG, upgrades should be simple to earn but complex to implement appropriately. You still have to manage your upgrades to match the strategy for progression, like opportunistically saving the health upgrades for the hardest rooms and boss fights, because healing in this game is almost non-existent. It's probably the most controversial change made in Ninja Gaiden 3. But in a way, having healing restrictions makes perfect sense and helps to maintain a performance-based scoring system which every action game should have. Action games generally don't encourage healing, and typically frown upon doing so, but Ninja Gaiden knows that you will need to heal at some point, but you have to earn it. If you take too much damage, your health bar gradually, if not abruptly, shrinks in totality, making each successive battle more nerve-wracking as you fight for survival itself. In reverse, the more damage you deal to enemies, particularly in the way of combo hits and obliteration techniques, the faster you charge up Nimpo, earning back your health restoration. I believe the synergy of risk and reward is the best addition that the team made to try to keep the series fresh while retaining its demand curve of always staying in action, always requiring razor-sharp focus. In this context, Razor's Edge earns its title and its place in the lineage by making sure personal performance counts for more, as an action game should. I come to appreciate the game more when I consider that it and its original counterpart were both directed by Fumihiko Yasuda-san, the handsome guy and man of integrity behind the Neo series and the renaissance at Team Ninja in the last decade. He's a developer that I truly admire, so I knew I had to see what his vision of a Ninja Gaiden game was. Although he isn't Itagaki, the guy knows how to come up with some crazy gameplay sequences. There were long stretches of fighting in this game with no checkpoints and on higher difficulties that honestly made me question if what I was witnessing was real. Ninja Gaiden 3 is not shy at throwing wave after wave of some of the hardest enemies in the game at you, including multiple bosses at once, without room to breathe in between. But after the fighting's over, I'm glad there's a pause button so I can take time to compose myself for the next ridiculous onslaught to come. Where Ninja Gaiden 2 had flirted with the idea of something beyond Master Ninja Mode, the intimidating Ultimate Ninja Mode, it only featured a few missions of the flavor in the Ninja Trials mode. Ninja Gaiden 3 was ambitious enough to make an actual difficulty option here, with these parameters that even veteran players might struggle with, and though it isn't as bad as it sounds, it's still pretty hellish. Games like this really prove that practice makes perfect, because it's only after multiple playthroughs, each one changing the damage values and, more importantly, the enemy placement, that you're able to get past it all, and I was prepared for anything they threw at me, and I managed to scrape by thanks to experience and belief. As bad as the story mode is, nothing is as terrible as the Ninja Trials in these games. And this one, designed for 2 players, like the ones in Razor's Edge, which were really designed for 2 players, which have to now be done solo in the Master Collection. I found these to be worse in some ways than the ones with the brain-dead AI partner from Sigma 2. Thankfully, in a show of leniency, the developers only ask us to do some of the trials on our own, so I went with the most manageable, most cheesy missions so as to not truly want to rip my hair out. And even then, it took its toll. But once again, practice makes perfect, and you can only really judge a game once you've examined it on a deeper level. And what I found is that the game is still annoying and very flawed, but you can't say they didn't try. It's more than most games made today attempt to do. And speaking of trying, the enemies are tricky in this game, including those familiar faces that return from the previous games, making appearances in the Test of Valor Gauntlet challenges. And of course, the new bosses and enemy types, as annoying as they are, always make you think about how to approach them. Ninja Gaiden devs have always held pride over their ability to design the smartest AI in the room, but in a sense, if the AI is too clever, it kind of does ruin the fun a bit. There are straight-up Yakuza Kiwami 2 levels of block going on here that can really change the vibe completely from a hack-and-slash adrenaline rush to a tedious attrition. Now, if you're a really good player and you study the game in detail, you can pull off some awesome moves, putting everything to shame. And, of course, the hidden depth is what real gamers relish here. But for the casual gamer that just wants to see and conquer, it's not going to be the most fun game to play. And if you've seen the previous efforts made by a much more experienced and confident team at the time when they made them, you might wonder, what does Razor's Edge have to offer that we haven't seen and felt before in some form? Trying to do too much can be as harmful to the integrity of the product as doing too little. And for what inexplicable reason they decided to give Ryu human emotions and an entire convoluted plot to save the world from the insufferable English twats, and a giant fucking statue transformed from a little girl, is once again just some convoluted Japanese garbage that surprises no one at this point. The attempts to turn Hayabusa into an earnest character voiced by Troy Baker just ended up with utterly bizarre results that only a Japanese storyteller could conceive. The reality is, for an action hero, typically less is always more. Action heroes show, not tell, and Ryu is perhaps gaming's greatest killer, not just by body count, but by viciousness. The Grip of Murder costume was a nice touch tying together the narrative and combat with the excuse of throwing the player into massive hordes under time control. Ryu's power trip throughout the series is on the same level as Dante or Kratos in their prime days, and any attempt to turn Ryu into a self-serious character was always doomed to fail. Thankfully, the chapter challenge does exist, so we can skip all the dialogue and most of the padded sections together and focus on what good elements do exist buried underneath a game that was too ambitious yet too self-conscious that it was missing out on the prestige that other try-hard developers of the day sought after, instead of going with its own unique identity. Action games truly are the best games when they realize that they need to be all killer and no filler. It's what a ninja knows best, and what smart gamers would realize too if they push themselves, and not because the game throws padding at us as an obstacle. I think we're able to forgive Yasuda and his team for their own personal trials here, because they were eventually able to give us Nioh and its inimitable sequel. All in all, the Ninja Gaiden trilogy is still one of the great achievements in all of gaming. Whether or not it would have been better as a pair of games rather than a trio is a debate, but it doesn't matter much given that Ninja Gaiden 4 is right around the corner. As a Team Ninja fan, I'm happy to have played all the games that made them famous, done what the developers asked me of to do in them, and now I await the next chapter in the Year of the Ninja. This has been the Commissioner of Games. Until next time, I bid you ninjas good night, God bless, good games, and goodbye. This is the Commissioner of Games, signing off.